Hello, I'm Jamie Perera. I'm a sound artist that uses sound to explore transformation in the Anthropocene. Firstly, thanks very much for having us at Outlier 2024. Myself, Jordan Wirfs-Brock, and Duncan Geere are very pleased to be presenting Open Sonifications, a manifesto for many ecologies of data and sound. Before we get into what that means, it might be a good idea to talk about what sonification is. So what is sonification? So for anyone who hasn't heard of this before, most simply put, it's the practice of using sound to represent objects, usually in an algorithmic way. The sound can be anything you like, a voice, an instrument, or even a sample of, say, bird song, or the ocean, or the sound of machinery. And the object can be anything you like. Most commonly it's data, but it can be any object you can think of: people on the subway, the stripes on a tiger, the fingers on a hand, which I'll get to in a moment. And in the same way we get information and create knowledge through looking at visual data, we also get information and create knowledge through listening to data. And there are properties of listening that are amazing that I won't go fully into now, but sonification is something we definitely encourage everyone to explore. Also, there are many examples of sonification in the world around us. For example, the ticks of a clock are sonifying time, a heart monitor is sonifying our heartbeats, and a Geiger counter is sonifying radiation levels in our environment. In terms of creative sonification, I'd like to demonstrate all of this by doing one of my simple sonification exercises with you right now in the auditorium. This will make us all instant sonification artists. So everyone, hold up your right hand in front of you, everyone. And so you can see the back of your hand and your fingers. And now we're going to sing or hum a melody that corresponds with the height of our fingers. So I'm going to do it twice, and I'd like you to do it with me. So we're going to use this as our root note. Dum, dum. Yeah, that's good. Dum, 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 dum. Can everyone see that? Dum, 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 dum. And now all together. Dum, 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 dum. So what have we done there? We've created an algorithm with sound that we can now apply to, say, our left hand. So now if we're going from left to right with our left hand, what would that melody be? So I'm going to sing it now. So see if you've got it right. Dum, 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 dum. One more time. Dum, 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 dum. And then all together. Dum, 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 dum. There you go. Congratulations. You're all now sonification artists. So the question is, what happens, for example, if we do the same thing with a V sign? What does the meaning of the victory sign do to the sound that we use? What if it's the Vulcan greeting sign? What if it's a fist? So you can see instantly that there's so much to explore with even the most simple of sonification ideas. And we respond to both, we respond to this in both a cognitive and emotional way. And that combination of facts, emotion, and subject matter can be amazing in communication. And that's the beauty of sonification. In a world with massive amounts of data, we can feel overwhelmed and disempowered. So we want people to treat data as a creative material to understand themselves and the world around them. I'm sure you'd agree this is not designated to just analysts, researchers, and technologists. But in sonification, we find that this is a challenging field for newcomers because it's assumed that it requires specialist skills like coding, knowledge of psychoacoustics, musical training, and more. This is accentuated by norms that have developed around sonification as a community of practice and an area of research. The ways in which data can be experienced in sound are almost limitless, but the field is dominated by approaches that prioritize analytical insight and algorithmic sound synthesis. These include sonification as science communication, data journalism, and auditory display. And an important tradition is left out completely, which is design. As sonification practitioners, we, the authors, we identify not as analysts or engineers, but as artists, designers, explorers, and questioners. Hence our provocation, Open Sonifications, a manifesto for many ecologies of data and sound. This calls for a more inclusive approach to data sonification that acknowledges and embraces the diverse identities and techniques that have not been traditionally represented within the sonification research community. The approaches we map out in this manifesto are not intended to replace the status quo, but to expand it. So, sonification is a powerful tool for thought that can benefit all kinds of people. Open Sonifications is a call to discover and extend this ecosystem, embracing a wider range of goals, perspectives, and methodologies. And we invite you to explore, participate, and innovate in an ever-evolving dialogue between data and sound. In the rest of this talk, we'll explain our values and inspiration, show some more examples, talk about what this means for data viz people, and discuss how to get started. So, on to Jordan.
Hi, my name is Jordan Wirfs-Brock, and I'm an assistant professor of computer science at Whitman College. I'm an educator, designer, and researcher who explores how we can use all of our senses, sight, taste, touch, smell, and especially sound, to communicate data in fun and compelling ways. And before that, I was a data journalist working in public radio, which is how I first discovered sonification. My current work in Open Sonifications includes participatory events where I've conducted audiences in performing as a live data chorus together. It's pretty fun. And today I'm going to be sharing some of the traditions from data visualization and beyond that inspire our ideas and approaches to Open Sonifications, as well as our core values. To start with, we consider Open Sonifications to be a data feminist practice. Data feminism is a term put forth by Catherine D'Ignazio and Lauren Klein that encourages us to expose the power structures and power imbalances inherent in how we use data and how we represent data. Sometimes this means working within existing conventions, such as when NASA's Christine Darden and Gloria Champine made a powerful data-driven argument that women and men at NASA were being promoted at different rates in the 1960s and 70s. They used the dominant language and rhetoric of data visualization, bar charts and tables, to subvert the existing power structures. Other times, data feminism can mean using unconventional approaches, such as leveraging emotion and sensory experiences to make data more visceral, to encourage us to feel data with our bodies. In this tradition, we are inspired by the hand-drawn data portraits of W.E.B. Du Bois, which told the story of Black Americans by presenting topics such as education, employment, and migration using bold colors and shapes like spirals and zigzags. Importantly, Du Bois engaged other Black scholars and students to help draw these data portraits because he believes they should be crafted by and accessible to the people that they described. We are also inspired by the work of journalist Mona Chalabi, whose data illustrations remind us that we have bodies, and indeed our bodies are sources of data, and they can be simultaneously hilarious and terrifying. We also love the Dear Data Project from Georgia Lupi and Stephanie Posavec, who remind us that mundane data is worthy of our attention too. As they sent each other intimate data postcards, they also grappled with the smudgy realities of their pens and other materials, which provided unexpected opportunities for self-reflection around data. Moving to the world of sound, we draw inspiration from composer Pauline Oliveros. She proposed a practice called deep listening, which she described as listening in every possible way to everything possible to hear no matter what you are doing. Listening is a lifelong skill that we can improve with practice. So how might we develop our deep listening muscles? Oliveros' idea that's inspired others to create scores for acts of listening, which are simple, easy to follow instructions that you can perform anytime, any place. For example, Eli Neumann Hammond's activity for 2 people. 1, write out all the sounds that you can hear. 2, out loud, read these accounts simultaneously within a duration equal to that in which they were made. I encourage you to try this at your next opportunity. These scores and other recipes for action inspire our playful jump-right-in approach to Open Sonifications. Drawing on these traditions and others like zine, DIY and craft culture, and the Fluxus art movement, we present a series of values that sketch out the contours of open sonifications as an emerging practice. First are intentions. We encourage all kinds of people to make sounds in all kinds of ways using all kinds of data. We value many voices, community engagement, and unbounded purposes. We consider the entire world to be our data set. Use crowdsourced data, messy data, incomplete data, or data drawn from the world around you. The rings of a tree, the height of the heads of people standing on a train platform. Next, in our processes, we support unusual approaches. We want people to tinker with sound and data, use them as creative materials. Exploration is way more important than perfection. Thus, we value many different approaches, a DIY aesthetic, Sing Power, which acknowledges the wild and unruly properties of sound and data as materials that have their own agency. They don't always do what you want them to do, and that is okay. Embrace the unpredictability. We also encourage embodiment. How can you feel data with your body? And transformation. How can using sound transform our relationship with data? In terms of presentation, an open sonifications approach values many kinds of sound. Anything around you can be an instrument. Your body, objects, what have we got here? Some paper clips. And we also consider data and sound to be connected to the places and the spaces and the people around us. Right now, I'm not sure if you can hear it, but there's the sound of an air conditioner. I can't do anything about that. That's just the reality of the place that I'm in. We delight in disruption, go ahead, make a mess, cause a ruckus. We hope to engage broad audiences. We think sound creations are just as at home in public libraries, local gatherings, and online communities as they would be in news articles, academic journals, or at conferences like this one. Finally, we acknowledge that sound and data are inherently biased and include impressions of the people who created them and their conscious and unconscious values. Thus, we seek for open sonifications to be critically inclusive. And now I'm going to pass it over to Duncan, who will talk about how you can get started making your own open sonifications right now.
Hi folks, my name is Duncan Geere and I'm the co-founder of data sonification studio Loud Numbers, the Data Sonification Awards, and the Elevate Learning Community for Creative Data Visualization. I also run Climat Studio, which helps environmental nonprofits tell their data stories. But I'm here today to talk about the landscape of open sonifications, what you can get out of this even if you don't work with sonification, and how to get started. Now, the world of sonification sees a lot of particularly common approaches. It's often used in the context of accessibility, helping people with visual impairments. It's also often used in data journalism and in science communication, particularly in astronomy. And these approaches tend to be melodic, mostly involving sonification with pitch, and sometimes they can be interactive. And then there are some lesser seen approaches. Political and activist work that uses sonification to make a point. Educational sonification, where it's used in the learning process. Sound art sometimes involves sonification. And then there are also natural sonifications out there, like how wind chimes are a sonification of wind gusts. Sometimes sonification is even folded into a musical or an emotive context. And this is something we try to do a lot at Loud Numbers. But this is just the beginning. There's a whole landscape out there of things that sonification could be, but are rarely seen. Why do we almost never see sonification with speech, or disruptive sonification, or cinematic sonification, or lo-fi sonification? What would a feral sonification sound like, or an anti-colonial one, or a retro sonification? It's also sometimes useful to define things by what they're not. We think open sonifications shouldn't aim to be authoritative, pristine, shiny, or highbrow, for example. They shouldn't be corporate or sleek, and they definitely shouldn't exclude people. Hopefully, though, this map serves as an interesting source of things to check out. We're not saying that they're all a good idea, but surely some of them are worth experimenting with. If we don't push at the edges of the known world, how else are we going to find out where the sea monsters are? And right now you're probably thinking, yeah, sea monsters are cool and all, but what does this actually mean for me as a data viz expert trying to communicate with people? Well, we think there are a few things that the data viz world could take from our work. The first is a sense of playfulness and experimentation. One of the reasons that I love sonification is that it's kind of a wild west. There's no list of how sonifications should be made. You just try stuff and see what works. And that's very different to the world of data viz, where you're constantly tripping over conflicting best practice guides. In 2 minutes of Googling, you can find one article that explains why pie charts are the worst thing humankind has ever invented, and one article saying, actually, they're not that bad. They can be helpful in some circumstances. An open sonifications approach might be to say, pies are cool, but why don't we try making a stew instead? Second is a focus on community and bringing people together to talk about data as humans. When it comes down to it, almost all of us here are really just trying to make data more understandable. That's the whole point of visualization. But often in practice, that ends up meaning people who understand data talking down to people who don't. Open sonifications actively tries to avoid this dynamic by bringing communities together to talk about data and what it means for them. And then finally, open sonifications is all about expressing how data makes you feel. Information builds knowledge, which is great, but emotion drives action. Have you ever spent ages crafting a really careful call to action and then have the vast majority of people ignore it entirely? I know that I have. And it's usually because I haven't created an experience that helped people feel something about the data. Open sonifications puts the focus squarely on emotion and action. So if that sounds good, where do we begin? Well, first, I want you to put out of your mind the idea that you need some kind of fancy synthesizer to make data sonifications. You probably don't even need a spreadsheet. You definitely don't need to know how to code or to play an instrument. It can be as simple as step 1, collect some data about your life using a pencil and a piece of paper. Step 2, figure out how you feel about that data. Step 3, come up with some kind of system for converting those feelings into vocal sounds, perhaps sighs or coughs or yawns or woos. They're all good places to start. Step 4, you've got a sonification. Record the results, share them with other people. And it's easy to build from there. Bring in other people and compare your feelings with their feelings. If you play an instrument, try bringing that in. And if you don't, find some kind of resonant object that can be hit with something else, like this. You can hit it harder or faster. You can hit it softer or slower. You can let it ring out or mute it quickly. The ways that you can turn data into sound are infinite. And before very long, you'll start seeing sonifications everywhere. How the sound of your breathing gets faster when you run. How people that are feeling sad will speak more quietly. The slight wobble in the voice of a conference speaker who's nervous. Borrow these approaches, systematize them, and use them to express your own feelings about your own data. So to sum it all up, this is some data. These are some instruments. This is an audio recorder. Now make a sonification. That's all from us. We're going to leave you with an audio version of the Open Sonifications Manifesto, which is also available at opensonifications.net. And then we'll be back in a minute for some Q&A. See you then.
The Open Sonifications Manifesto.
The Open Sonifications Manifesto.
Play this in a public place. This is a manifesto in search of many sonifications.
We invite you to use it as a map
to explore the varied worlds
of data and sound.
Sonification is not one thing, it is a diversity of things.
We embrace and encourage curious approaches to exploring the world through data and sound.
The act of making a sonification is just as, if not more, important than the final outcome.
We seek to explore the edges of what is possible with sonification by challenging and expanding existing conventions about
why we might sonify something. Play.
Explore, feel, tinker.
What we can do with
intention, process, meaning.
Who gets to do things with it?
That's anyone and everyone. No training required.
What counts as valid data?
Subjective data, personal data. But we want the world to be our data set.
What counts as valid
Found
sound?
Weird sounds, ugly sounds, and speech.
What tools we can use?
i.e. our bodies, our emotions, our social connections.
In addition to providing analytic
a
insight,
traditional
we
goal.
acknowledge that sonifications can have other goals
Or open
that
goals
are just as meaningful. They can
transform us and the way we see the
Prompt us
world,
to examine our assumptions about how the world works.
engage us in activism or political social
and
commentary.
allow us to express ourselves and to understand data through our bodies.
We love
We love
Decentralization,
centralization,
expressiveness,
participation,
danceability,
raw energy,
making as a way of
as a way
knowing,
of knowing,
community,
plural perspectives,
plural perspectives, approachability.
performance.
We offer open sonifications as a counter-approach to dominant sonification strategies.
but believe that they
And
can
should
coexist
We don't wish to obliterate the status quo, but we do want to extend it.
extend
to
it.
extend it.